Over a year before you launched Replit Agent, you posted the Replit AI manifesto, and inside it, you said agents were in the works and were a vision. So I'm curious how the transition from stating agents are happening to actually launching it.
If you asked me to bet any money back in the days that we would have launched 15 months from when we posted it, I would have put $0. I still felt that we really went much faster than I would have ever imagined back then, which is great. If you extrapolate based where we are today, who knows how powerful our product is going to be next year. It makes it even more exciting.
Yeah, and mid-project, we've had a lot of things happen that made the project better, like new models dropping and new ideas, new ways to evaluate interface between the models and our computer infrastructure. It was a very dynamic project. We're going to have to work week by week. Even in the last 3 weeks before launch, we changed fundamental things about the product. And so I've never been involved in such a dynamic project where you're building a castle in quicksand almost. Like the earth underneath you is sort of shifting, but it's incredibly exciting.
Amjad, Michele, thank you for joining. I'm very excited to have you both on. Usually we have one guest at a time, but I can't wait to dive into your working relationship together, into Replit, how you're all thinking about AI. Even though you put a lot of great blog posts out, we can continue going deeper, and how you've built that to be such a core part of the company. So I think when we talk about Replit, we can't do it without understanding the origin story, which is very tied to Michele. We've talked about your origin story over Italian food, your Italian roots, but
that's enough.
That's enough. We could do it too. But Amjad, I would love to hear a little bit about how you got hooked on programming. I know that you grew up in Jordan and your father brought you a computer or bought a computer home when you were 6. So what hooked you on this new device in your home? How'd you get into it?
Well, I think it was just a fascinating thing for me. Like you can put your ideas into this machine and it just does them for you, no question asked. I think I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. And so it's kind of one of my earliest memories is watching my father set up the computer, start to use it. And I would just like memorize the commands. He was using DOS. So when he steps away, I would go in and create files and delete files and just do random things with it. And quickly discovered programming, started making games and doing all sorts of things, and fell in love. And I think I've been lucky that I've known what I wanted to do in my life ever since I was a kid, because I've been so passionate about programming.
The existential crises are harder. So you kind of found your passion super early. I know since then you studied computer science, but actually not just programming started a long time ago for you. Actually, Replit started before the company. So I would love to hear a little bit about the inspiration behind this web-based IDE called Replit. How did that happen? Why did it happen?
Yeah, so that goes back to 2008. I was going to college in Jordan. Laptops were still pretty expensive back then, and so I didn't have one. And so one of my struggles was every time I wanted to solve some homework, write a program, I would have to go to the computer lab and I would have to set up the programming environment, download an IDE. If it's Java, this is multi-gigabytes and this is an hour waiting for it to set up. And you have to do it every time you want to write a piece of program. And at the time, everything was moving to the web. Chrome, I think, had just come out. Google Docs had just come out. The Gmail was this like browser-based app. And it just felt like the web is going to be able to run all sorts of software. And I thought surely someone had built like a web-based IDE. Well, it turns out no one had done it at the time. I was like, how hard could it be? Well, 15 years later, I'm still working on it. Turns out it's pretty freaking hard. but naively was able to get something done pretty quickly, running a few programming languages, But then kind of the big breakthrough came when I was able to compile a bunch of programming languages to run on the browser for the first time and put up Replit as this sort of demo for this kind of breakthrough. And it went viral, and that resulted in my in getting a job working at Code Academy as a founding engineer in 2012, and that brought me to the US.
Okay, I'm curious about two things you said there. One is, how did it go viral? Did you go to all the computer cafes in Jordan and say, hey, this will make your life easier? Did you post it on the internet? How did something like that happen?
I am sort of like the, at the, I'm a millennial at the edge of when we really lived on the internet, right? So the idea of me going out and marketing this thing door to door didn't even cross my mind. I just put it up on Hacker News, and I was starting to read Hacker News. I was reading Paul Graham's essays on Lisp and programming languages, and that's part of my passion was programming languages. And so Hacker News was really into programming languages, and from there spread into Reddit and Slashdot, which is now
gone,
basically not the same, and Twitter a little bit as well. And so, but kind of the intuition is that if Hacker News would like it, they would be able to spread it, and that's what happened.
If Hacker News likes it, the hackers like it, and it will spread from there.
Right, and then at some point they'll hate you, and that's the life cycle of Hacker News.
That's when you're succeeding.
Yes.
Yeah.
Part of being in the game.
Right, exactly.
When Code Academy reached out, because I know they were using Replit to enhance some of their offerings and wanted to bring you on board, was that an easy decision? Did you want to move to America? That's a big change. So
I really wanted to move to America since I watched. Do you know this movie called Pirates of Silicon Valley?
I thought you were going to say Pirates of the Caribbean.
I almost said that.
I'm missing the connection.
That's a great movie. But there's a movie that's probably 1/100th of the budget called Pirates of Silicon Valley.
Have you seen it, Michele?
Of course, yeah.
This is why you two, you found each other.
Right, exactly. This is our generation of hackers kind of watched this over-dramatized
Gates versus Jobs, basically.
Yeah, Gates versus Jobs kind of thing. And I was like, oh man, Silicon Valley sounds awesome. You can just yell and sell computers, and I don't yell as much, but we're selling.
Michele, confirm, deny? Does he yell as much?
No, internally, no, we don't yell. Yeah. But we have strong opinions. Let's put it this way.
Strong opinions are good.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, interesting. So, I know that since then you moved to America and your career really took off. You led the JavaScript infrastructure team at Facebook. You worked on several very popular open source projects, but eventually you started Replit. And I found this interesting tweet. I'm trying to remember what year it was, from a few years ago, where you said that you dreaded the idea of starting a company and you tried really hard not to. And you had all these different things you were doing to try to avoid building and becoming the CEO of a company. So that's a pretty unusual take, especially in the Valley, where it can feel like, folks in search of an idea. So what happened that made you finally pull the trigger, go all in on Replit, and build the company that you have today?
I think being founder has become like glamorous over the years, and a lot of people are attracted to it. But still, a lot of people quit as soon as it becomes real. It's still hard, no matter how glamorous it is, and I knew how hard it is because I've worked at so many startups being first or second employee. And I think you tend to, once you're close to the founders, you tend to see sort of the level of stress and hard work it takes. So I kind of knew that my job at Facebook wasn't the most comfortable, but it was still Facebook. It was pretty comfortable. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner served, and all of that. And so I was like, I want to work on cool things. I want to work on things I'm interested in. I want to be able to continue to be technical, and I know that running companies is just really difficult, and you end up basically having an email job, which is my job today.
It pulls you in a lot of directions. Yeah.
Yes. um, but ultimately, it was hard to find that balance, and kind of Replit sort of exploded itself onto the world in a way where there was this clear pull from the market, from users. It kept going, and it sort of made the decision for me that we just had to start the company.
Were there certain things users wanted more of when Replit was just, a side project? Were there certain things they wanted more of that really needed the company infrastructure beyond scale?
Yeah, more compute. They still
More
need that.
compute. Everyone,
That's
yeah.
what we still
I'm
struggle
sure
with.
you all can relate to that. Everyone wants more compute.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I think from the start, people just wanted to do more with it, and that's the best thing about running Replit. And now with the agent is that, uh, you know, it's never been that hard to have a roadmap because people will just tell us what was missing and what they needed from it.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens when you have a product folks are using and love, and they become opinionated, like Hacker News for in the good and the bad. Um, so speaking of agent, which you just brought up, I'd love to hear you had built Replit. We talked a little bit about its origin story and how it brought you to America. But you already have millions of users worldwide. So when and why did AI become a relevant part of your product strategy? Maybe that seems super obvious in retrospect, but I think you were relatively ahead of the curve when you made that choice to make a large bet here.
Yeah, I think my career always gravitated towards working on tools for code. So going back, even before Replit, my time at Yahoo, I was also working on libraries, compilers, transpilers. At Codecademy, I was obviously working on interpreters and parsers. At Facebook, I was working on also compilers, parsers, interpreters, and there was always this feeling that the tools we have to manage code are too laborious, are in fact predictable, and code follows a very strict pattern. But building these tools is really hard, and it felt like as deep learning was happening, as ML revolution was kind of exploding onto the scene, is that it feels like you should be able to apply machine learning on coding tools. And so I always was interested in that. And then around 2013, 14, you started seeing a lot of papers coming out trying to apply ML to coding. And so I kind of followed that space. And the first time it felt like we're almost there was GPT-2. You could tell that if you have this language model that is able to follow certain syntax and be able to complete things, that maybe you could make it work on code. And GPT-3 is when we built the first feature. I think the first feature we built was like explaining code. And it was clear from then. I think I remember writing a blog post called Future of Coding, and I kind of lay out how, and that was in 2020, lay out how coding will change over the next few years. And I think I was mostly right. The one thing I was wrong about was that maybe we'll invent new programming languages that make it easy for LLMs to generate code. But I think, LLMs just benefit from having really large training corpus, and they really actually privilege existing languages. So actually, it's kind of hard to create a new language today. But for the most part, I think I was right about how it becomes easier to author programs, and there's going to be just a lot more programmers. And it felt like it was the continuation of the Replit mission of making programming more accessible. And this is how I met Michele as well, and he's also been thinking about it for a while.
So Michele, you've been working on this problem for a long time. You were the head of applied research at Google. You worked on projects like PaLM 2. So how did you and Amjad meet, and what led to the decision to officially move to Replit and form an AI team with you leading it?
Yeah, so I was a Replit user back in the days already. I think very first wrote that post about the future of coding. So I felt, okay, we're very much aligned. And then back in the days where we were trading Palm, when it wasn't released yet, I was thinking of potential partnerships, like companies that would have been interested in what we were building, and also that the same kind of mindset that I had. I think I always had a hybrid approach in terms of doing research for the sake of making products better, rather than just doing cool research. And that's when, basically Amjad and I ended up meeting each other. I gave them a demo of Palm integrated on Replit. I think at this point is almost 3 years ago. Feels like a decade. And yeah, so we've been in touch since then. We ended up going for dinners and talking a lot about how coding is gonna be changing because of AI. And I feel like many other people that are currently at Replit, you sort of end up in that gravitational pull that sucks you in the company, because the mission is just is very inspiring. I think all of us come from a background where we wrote code our entire lives, and like the idea of making that accessible to everyone, it kind of trumps every other personal goal that you might have ever had in life. And I was lucky enough to have been doing research exactly on this field, so it felt to me this was a perfect match to kind of bring everything that I learned in the past years in research and bring it to product. And that was early 2023, basically.
I was going to say, I love that. And I've also heard that from folks who work at the company, also work on your team, Michele. So, people who deeply understand the mission and want to get programming out into the world. On the AI side, I actually remember when you released your first AI product back when it was called Ghostwriter and it was still in beta. And I think I went to a few hackathons. This is early. Lots of excitement in the Valley. And I don't know if they were developer advocates, but there were some folks who worked at Replit who were on the ground handing out credits at the hackathons. I'm just curious what you learned from that initial product, having it out in the wild. Like, what did you learn from the market from that launch, and what made you lean even harder into AI?
I can take part to it, and then I want to hear your opinion as well. To me, the most important lesson I learned is the fact that new generation of coders, what we call AI first coders, they write code in a completely different way compared to what we've been used to. And they're way more comfortable in communicating in natural language what they need, copy pasting snippets of code from a model. They don't start by thinking of the structure, first of all, and maybe the architecture. They build things bottom up rather than top down. And that has been always fascinating to me, because to be honest, being on the side of a person that's been training very large models, I always thought that they would have been useful in very different use cases compared to what we see today. So handing off credits to people that will usually not use Replit and they don't come from like a computer science background, I think it kind of train us over time how to address the next billion software developers rather than the people who are already professional developers. I think my brain, and likely yours as well, we are hardwired in a way. It's going to be hard for us to change our approach to software. But we want to learn from people that never wrote a single line of code in their life. And today they can build apps from the ground up, as you've seen from the Replit Agent demos. That's what's exciting about giving this to you.
Even before the demo, I remember, I guess during this hackathon era, when there was a lot of excitement, there was, I think her name was Priya, like a non-technical PM who won a hackathon using Replit. And I thought that was a very cool demonstration of maybe you have a certain idea of who the end user is, and it just expands over time. I don't know what that learning journey looks like in the long term, or if you have theses of what it looks like to continue to develop as a programmer. If this is a tool for kind of smaller tasks, or how do you think about that?
Well, I think you should be able to come to Replit and within like 5 minutes be able to have generated an application that at least you yourself wanted to use. And so, previously, for the past 8 years, I couldn't say that. when people come up to me and say, hey, Replit sounds awesome. Like, how do I get started? I tell them, well, you need 100 days first.
You get there.
You need to invest 100 days. We have this course, 100 days of code. And we do have this great course called 100 Days of Code that only 0.5% of people who started actually finish it. And
Like an online course.
yeah, it's hard. Learning programming is hard. And so
And 100 days is fast, all things considered, right?
100 days is super fast, right?
It's very fast.
And so now I can say, go to Replit, type an idea you've had for a long time for a piece of software into this box on our homepage. See what it makes for you. Play around with it. Click around on the code. Go to the AI. Ask it to explain the code for you. Think of another feature you want to add. Try to add that feature. If you hit an error, take that error. Ask the AI to help you with it. Don't just use our AI. Go to Claude. Go to ChatGPT. Use all the tools available for you. And along the way, you're going to learn programming. And by the way, this is how our generation learned how to code. We didn't have AI, but we didn't set out to say, oh, I'm going to learn how to program. Most of us wanted to mod a game. Most of us wanted to edit our MySpace page.
Do you remember the MySpace? This is a very critical part of growing up.
Exactly. You wanted to add colors or a GIF or whatever to your MySpace and make it hideous, obviously, but it was fun. And somehow along the way, we lost this capability of learning programming by having a need. And so we're bringing it back, I think, with Replit Agent, is that come Replit Agent to solve a problem. And I promise you, by virtue of solving this problem, you're going to learn enough coding to be dangerous.
Yeah, that unfortunately brought up a scary memory of my Senga account with the notebook photos in the background. But absolutely, I mean, I can think of how many times, even in school with programming assignments, where the amount of time to arrive at something quite simple, if you have some baseline and you can just learn, the iterations of learning are so much faster.
Yeah, I envy the younger generation. They can be way more productive than we were back in the days. So.
Well, that's the hope, right? You want to make each generation more able to produce more and have more leverage. So
that's our goal.
That's the goal. So I guess related to that, when thinking about who is using Replit, I remember when your AI products first launched. So this is before Replit Agent, which we're going to dive into. A lot of companies were very early in AI waters, and they were offering AI features as separate products or separate SKUs. And so I'm just curious why you decided to make this new, powerful paradigm free. I'm sure it was pretty costly too on your end.
Less than you would expect. Like we put a lot of work not to bankrupt because of the launch. But that being said, we wanted to send a strong signal that AI features are not optional for the kind of user experience that we always had in mind. And if our goal is to lower the barrier of entry to coding, it doesn't really make sense if a large subset of our users doesn't get access at least to the basic AI features that we strongly believe are necessary to become productive. So that's why we wanted to plant the flag and make sure that everyone understood where the product was going. Now we launch Agent. Of course, it's not a product that today we can afford to give to everyone at large, but I'd be surprised if sooner than you might expect, a lot more people will have access to Agent. Again, we want to empower the next billion software developer, not the next few thousand software developers in the world.
Yeah, that makes sense as aligned with your mission, but I wasn't sure if it was a meaty or challenging decision, just given the nature of how features were coming out around that time.
I think the challenging thing about it is that it changed the user experience in fundamental ways, and people don't like change. And so we had a little bit of blowback from our user base, but now everyone likes it even better. And we're going to change things even more radically, I think, in the future. And I think that's sort of a philosophy of of how to build products and how to continue to evolve them, that at this point, having been around for these years, is that if you're not bold enough, then you're gonna just calcify, and you're gonna let sort of inertia dominate, and you're gonna be fearful. You're not gonna, Zuck, gets a lot of crap for move fast and break things, but there's quite a bit of wisdom in that term, and the main idea there is that if you want to evolve products fast, you have to be comfortable breaking some things.
Going back to parts of Silicon Valley, Apple has also been.
I'll do a movie night tonight, and I'll catch up.
Yeah, it's a must watch. Yeah.
Amjad, I used to also work at Facebook, so that resonates with me. I've also seen consumers get angry and then forget about it 3 weeks later. Has there been a time where I guess something has broken in a way that got where you heard a lot, but it ended up being the right decision, where you moved fast and maybe broke some things?
Still worth it.
Yeah. Like the Asian user experience has not been universally great.
It's polarizing.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely polarizing. And we knew it was not going to be great for every user type. And so from the start, we made a decision to focus on the less experienced coders, no to very little experience. And if we're able to make it so that someone with no programming experience could come to Replit and get something out of it, we would have validated the future of the company, essentially. That we're going to be able to create 1 billion programmers. But at the same time, like if you're a really experienced programmer, like the agent was not the best thing for you. I think over time it will get there, but sometimes you have to make these hard decisions. And we also launched it early, I think earlier than we're comfortable with, and we're evolving it really fast.
Is earlier than you're comfortable with something that you like to do?
By definition, if it's earlier than you're comfortable with, you're sort of like begrudgingly doing it.
Something you aim to do.
Let's put it this way: no one forced us to launch it that way. We didn't announce it. We just dropped it online and just posted a video, and everything else just followed. But we felt good enough about it.
Yeah, we actually were like, we're gonna just put it out as early access, and then we're gonna have a
low-key
real launch date. We're gonna have a real launch date in the future, and of course, the low-key version got 3 million views on Twitter.
I was going to say these are the dangers of Twitter. So
yes,
I've told you that. No, but I love what you said, and I think it goes back to this point of learning quickly for the new generation. Part of that is also building for folks who are learning with AI natively, and so it's very exciting. Okay, I have many questions about Replit Agent, but maybe first we can define, and Michele, I'll ask you to define what is Replit Agent.
Oh, there's not going to be an easy question, depending on how do we want to answer it. I would say, as of today, Replit Agent is a product that allows you to go 0 to 1 in a couple of minutes to build a lot of different web app ideas that you might have in your mind. Emphasis on web app, as Amjad was saying before. Today, our agent is very opinionated. It does certain things very well. It makes certain choices. People that are not experts, they don't even understand that this is happening. So they just love to see the end result in front of their eyes as soon as possible. But experienced software developers are usually opinionated. And if the agent is opinionated as well, of course, they clash and they don't really like each other. So that's what's going on today. And I would say the key difference of our agent compared to other alternatives in the market is that if you have a spectrum of autonomy going from full autonomy to maybe just being a basic chat assistant, we are kind of in between, where we try to take some actions autonomously. The agent does some level of debugging and fixing the code on your behalf. But every now and then we bring back the human in the loop. And we do this on purpose, not because the agent per se lacks the tools or like agentic workflows required to make progress, rather because we want the users to be engaged. We want them to see what the agent is doing so that they can also learn how to do that next time themselves in case they choose to do so. But last not least, because it's very hard to align what you initially express in your first prompt with what you actually want to be built. If you think about it, there are people that are paid a lot of money in the world to do that job, and they're product managers. They go from a very ambiguous description of what has to be built, they talk to customers, they collect the requirements, they write pages and pages. Our average prompt is usually a couple of sentences. Of course, there is no way to go from that high-level description to exactly what the user wants. So what we do is, every few steps, we ask you, is this what you're looking for? Can you test it? Can you give us feedback?
Yeah. So you also have the extras. Do you want to add X and Y and Z to add more to your app?
Do you want to add more? Do you want to add this additional feature? Why not? So we're going to do everything you want.
That makes sense. I have about 1 million questions around that because, everyone's talking about agents, but you put this agent in the market. And I like the product manager analogy that you made with the prompting. I think also when I think about different tiers of how technical folks are, maybe really advanced programmers have very strong preferences around the frameworks they use, for example, whereas, maybe someone more amateur starting out is just, how do I get this thing to work? So like level of opinion on the product side, but maybe also on the technical side. I'm not sure if you're seeing that too.
We do. We collect opinions at this point from any walk of lives and every different professions. I would say people that don't have any level of expertise or coding literacy, most of them find it magical. And to be honest, if I put myself in their shoes, I will also think that this was literally magical. But I've also, talked to a lot of, friends of mine and people with a similar background where they still like what the agent can accomplish. Because the truth is, would I be able to reproduce what it does? Most likely, yes. But it would take me way more time. Like most of us, as Amjad was saying before, our jobs are becoming like email jobs, or where we talk to other people. So I'm not as well versed in programming as I was like 20 years ago. The fact that the agent most of the times gets it done in 2 minutes, it's valuable regardless the fact that you could do it on your own.
Yeah, likewise. I'm not as, I'm not Amjad. My front end is not amazing. And so all of that makes sense.
Yeah. We come from an ugly internet, so who cares about front end? Right?
So I have a few, technical questions about how you think about AI at Replit and also build Replit Agent. The first one is that I know you decided to train your own models internally when you started, we'll call it experimenting with AI and putting AI products in production. And my understanding was that was mostly because OpenAI didn't have the latency you needed early on. So I'm curious about a few things. How much latency matters when you have an agent building a full thing? Like, is that still the right move? And maybe just how you think broadly about model training. I know that the two of you invest in startups together. What do you advise companies? I know everyone is case by case on model training.
So we took care of our own training last year, not only for latency, but especially for unit economics. So when we decided to do the AI for all launch, it was necessary for us to own the entire stack. And what I mean by that is the model checkpoint, we took care of the inference, we do everything the most possible optimized way, because we really wanted that to happen. And we kind of wanted to change the perception of what our company is about. But right now, our focus has shifted much on the agent. As you mentioned, latency is not that important. If I had to rank, say, accuracy, latency, and cost, definitely accuracy is by far the most important, like making sure that we can accomplish the task that we set the agent on. Cost, of course, matters, both for our expenses and also when we're going to reflect them to the user. And latency, I would say, is a far third priority. And I think it's going to be like this for quite a while, in the sense that if you can build something in a few minutes that people find valuable, cutting that down by 50%, I don't think it's going to be that impactful in the short term. So for us right now, rather than thinking of training models from scratch, what we do, and we're probably going to invest more efforts on in the future, is fine-tuning models for some of the actions that the agent does so that we can accomplish, higher compliance or higher reliability.
Yeah, so the reason latency mattered when we were doing code complete is because your competition is code intelligence, all right? Like you're replacing basically non-AI code complete, which is on the order of milliseconds, and people are used to complete interactions happening on the order of milliseconds. Agent is replacing labor, right? It's replacing going and hiring out a programmer. We actually heard from a lot of people who use Agent who said, normally I would go out to Upwork or somewhere else and hire a programmer, and I was able to do it now by my own. That paid for itself almost immediately. And so when you're replacing labor, you're not as time sensitive. You're actually fine with it taking even up to a day if you get the results that you want. So on the order of minutes is you're totally fine. And you're still cost sensitive because cost is at minimum it needs to be cheaper than human software engineers. And the most important thing is like, can you build what I asked you to build? And that's the thing that we're going to be working on, I think, for the next 5 years, probably, is like, can you increasingly get closer to what the user has asked for?
So let's talk about what it takes to get there. Maybe I'll first ask, since you mentioned doing fine tuning, how do you think about maintaining a unique data advantage at Replit? And I'll add to that. We'll start there.
Well, I think we start from how do you make the product better? And if data is part of the answer, then we'll find out. But the question is how do you make the product better? For the most part, actually, this project, we found that it's for the most part engineering. Previous project, has been research or data. This project has been engineering, and it'll shift over time.
Yeah, maybe I'll reframe. How do you make the product better if the models don't improve at all? Like, how do you think about that? Versus how do you make the product better if you had the ability, O1 just came out and folks are talking about inference time compute. So across these two dimensions, what's on your mind for both?
Regardless of what will happen to models in the future, I would say the best way to make this product better was to actually launch it for two reasons. First of all, you collect a lot of feedback from users, so we know exactly what is really important for them and what is not. On the other hand, we are collecting a lot of data. And again, the fact that it's launched in public, it's literally available to everyone rather than being a closed demo, means that we're collecting possibly way more agentic data than most of the companies out there, I believe. And that means that analyzing those traces gives us a lot of insights on what actually goes wrong. We can even talk, to the large LLM labs out there and tell them the agent is failing for these 3 top reasons. Can we work on them together? So as usual, like, data comes with a lot of perks, and it's not necessarily just training models on them, but even getting insights makes a difference.
But by the way, it's kind of been amazing how much our answers have changed and the industry has changed just in the past few years. Like early on, we thought that training models internally was going to be really crucial, but then foundation models got really a lot better, a lot cheaper, a lot more general. And maybe it'll oscillate again in the future. Maybe in the future, you're like, okay, now we know the shape of the problem, and we're going to replace sort of every component of the system with a more cheaper, smaller model, and it's sort of ebbs and flows. And the shape of the industry kind of continues to change.
especially for agents, because it's a new playbook to build them. I don't think anyone knows the best practices. Like we're all figuring out by building in public.
Yeah, I think you're at the forefront of exploring that from a UX perspective, from a data perspective. But I think part of what's interesting there is about a year before you launched, maybe even longer. Michele, correct me, but over a year before you launched Replit Agent, you posted the Replit AI manifesto, and inside it, you said agents were in the works and were a vision. So I'm curious how the transition from stating agents are happening to actually launching it. Was that smooth sailing? Were there a lot of changes based on the research you're seeing, the new models, the ecosystem, and how you thought about actually bringing that to life? Maybe if there's one thing that was particularly unexpected, it sounds like model training was one of them. But if there's something else that comes to mind.
That definitely model training. So that post is from 15 months ago. We were chatting about it a few days ago. And the reason why we brought it up is because I intentionally left any timeline prediction. I was just explaining what I thought could have been feasible given the trajectory of how AI was evolving. If you asked me to bet any money back in the days that we would have launched 15 months from when we posted it, I would have put $0. No matter how optimistic I am and the fact that I've been part of that movement that kind of, kickstarted LLMs as they are today, I still felt that we really went much faster than I would have ever imagined back then. Which is great, if you extrapolate based where we are today, who knows how powerful our product is going to be next year. It makes it even more exciting.
Yeah, and mid-project, we've had a lot of things happen that made the project better, like new models dropping and so
new ideas based on the new models.
Yeah, new ideas, new ways to evaluate, new ways to interface between the models and our computer infrastructure. It was a very dynamic project, and early on, Michele and I told everyone that this is going to be a different project than anything else that you've worked on. There's going to be tremendous uncertainty. We're going to have to work week by week. So every week, they start the week with an agent run. We call them like a run where we do an agent session. They collect all the bugs and all the problems with it. They work out it through the week. And then I come on Friday, I do a run. I use the product in front of them. I tell them what sucks about it. and then we did that for a few months and we're still doing that. And it's just this week by week progress. And just like, even in the last 3 weeks before launch, we change fundamental things about the product. And so, I've now, like we talked about, I've been programming since I was 6 years old. I've never been involved in such a dynamic project where you're building a castle in quicksand almost. Like the earth underneath you is sort of shifting, but it's incredibly exciting. And you kind of gave an example about research and
you experience the same when you work on research topics where you will make a lot of progress in 3 months because maybe you found another paper that is adjacent and it gives you the right idea. Then you get stuck. Then you have to go back to the whiteboard and restart from scratch. It's kind of the level of uncertainty that we're used to when you do research. But getting a large engineering team used to that has been definitely an experience.
Yeah. What does it mean to actually build the teams? So I'd imagine there's 2 components. How do you actually go about finding the right skills for the AI team in a very product-oriented organization? But then also, how do you get all the other teams at Replit to understand, hey, this is part of your toolkit now, and you should be thinking about AI in some way? Like, what organizationally needs to happen to race as quickly as you all have in this direction?
I think curiosity is the most important trait for an engineer that will fare well in this kind of teams, in the sense that they need to be open-minded, they need to be curious to learn new techniques, and even the fact that maybe on a weekly basis we are changing some of our assumptions. There are people who react adversely to that, because they hate change, like many of us do. Some others that instead are stimulated by the fact that there is a new challenge ahead, and we need to find a different way to tackle that. So definitely, I think curiosity is important. And I would say we had great experience with people that had both an understanding of AI and also some of those that learn it on the job. Like as long as you're a smarter working person and you have a bias towards action, great things happen regardless of what you learn before joining this project. So that I think that's also what I learned when we ship Replit Agent. By now, if you talk to every single person that work across the stack, regardless if it was the platform or the UX, they can all give you like a higher level idea of how the agent works, which wasn't the case when we started. So I found that amazing I realize now we chat about very technical topics, and I tend to forget if they're part of the AI team or if they work on the UX. Everyone knows what's going on.
Yeah, everyone's bought into making it work.
Yeah.
I think a lot of that is company DNA. Probably Amjad, that you're such a strong believer in like projects are how you learn and building is how you learn. So you shouldn't be afraid of learning in pursuit of whatever it is we need to build. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
We let people gravitate to what they want to work on, and so people can follow their passion inside the company. And so when we started this project, we saw a lot of people started kind of orbiting around it, and we're like, all right, come into the room, help us. And so that's one of the best things about working at Replit is like you can find the area where you're most excited about.
I heard the war room was pretty intense in the final days.
Yeah.
I know who talks about that. Yes. You have some insider information. Let's put it this way.
I have some insider information on the war room, but I'll keep it above board. It sounds like one ultimate way to evaluate that Replit Agent is working is you have the Amjad every single week testing and checking it and giving critical feedback. But I actually am just curious on the eval front. Everyone talks about evals, and there are a bunch of benchmarks out there related to coding, but maybe they're less related to, I've built a 0 to 1 app with an agent and there's multiple steps. And so how do you solve this problem that's on a lot of people's minds? Have you solved the problem? How do you think about it?
Let's put it this way.
I'm not laughing.
Yeah, it sounds like you take it. The problem is certainly not solved. I will brag that probably we are in one of the best positions possible to solve it, because again, we are collecting user feedback and a lot of data. That being said, it's an extremely hard problem. Even some of the benchmarks that you are aware, like especially SweetBench, they only cover parts of the problem, and the product we built doesn't really address that use case where you already have a pre-existing project and you want to create a PR. Rather, we work on like 0 to 1. So we are tackling it in the following way. We have ways to evaluate shorter subset of the trajectory. So right now, like we have a way to teleport ourselves in one specific point of the trajectory, change the code base, and see how the agent will behave, depending on how we change the prompting or the code. We have also some ways to do end-to-end evaluations of a beginning of a trajectory, but right now we don't have the full end-to-end perfect capability to do that. And the reason is fairly trivial to understand. That is equivalent to AGI. If you have a human written natural language prompt that explains what they would like to see, and then you have the final artifact that the agent has generated, it's fundamentally an alignment problem between what the human expressed and what the system has built. And to test it, you also need to be a person that basically you instrument the browser, you click around, you see if it behaves in the way you expect it.
But you can understand if someone makes changes or iterates on a prompt and see like what actually happens from it may not be sufficient, but you can get a lot of human feedback data.
Yeah, so we build the products in a way where we collect a lot of human feedback also for this reason, because if you just let the agent go astray and go through like tens of hundreds of steps, the odds that it's gonna diverge away from what you wanted to build are extremely high. So keeping the human in the loop allows us to collect feedback, but also in a sense like put it on guardrails and make sure that we don't go away from what they wanted. But yeah, possibly the next time we meet on a podcast, I will tell you what kind of amazing end-to-end evals we built for the agent. But it's work in progress.
Yeah, I mean, I think even the guardrails you build are interesting, but the UI is a perfect example of that, of how can we guide to get closer to user intent, and how can we generate potential ideas that you don't say in the prompt, but we think could be related, or you may not specify in the prompt, but could be related.
We do some of that already. If you try the product when we propose your plan, yeah, like we tell, okay, these are a few more tasks that you might be interested in the agent to continue working on after the prototype. So we have guardrails in place where we try to avoid you working with certain specific libraries or stacks, but it's work in progress. There will be much more we can do in the next months.
One of the things we learned from the Ghostwriter experience is that even though there was better evals then, the real world usage it was different than the evals. Like, sometimes the benchmark number goes up, but the product quality will go down, and you judge product quality by are people accepting the suggestion? And so I think for us, we're starting to measure quality from human feedback, either explicitly, like I like it, or implicitly, like, oh, I didn't like this change, I'm gonna roll it back. And you can imagine, coming up with a score. You can imagine doing A/B tests, so we can start to flag changes and do A/B tests and see whether this results in less rollbacks and more deployments. And so again, like what Michele said, the most important thing was launching, because now iteration.
You can see the real production data that no one else has in a theoretical benchmark, especially when they're not doing agents. And this makes sense. I think I need to find it. There's a Microsoft paper that essentially, like, the biggest delta in the model is, do you accept the change or the suggestion? And this is just in a Copilot, versus are you making an edit? Okay, so would love to just hear, as a wrap up, how has building Replit changed you as a leader and a person?
Well, I think over time you learn that as a leader, you're the thing that makes you more effective is the thing that makes you just better as a human. So, for example, getting calmer, being able to handle stress better, getting healthier, all just helps you just become a better person, become a better leader. And so in a lot of ways, it is sort of a journey of betterment. It wasn't initially the case. Initially it's a journey of self-destruction, because you're working super long hours and you're being unhealthy. But then you realize that you
need to sustain yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to die too early, and so you gotta shift your habits, and also having a long-term view is so helpful, right? Like, I know now that we're going to be working on agents for a very long time, and we're not in a rush to make short-term decisions, and we just want to get it right. And we love feedback, we love user feedback, but we're going to also judge that user feedback through a lens of, is this going to make the product better a year from now or 2 years from now, or are we just taking short-term debt? And sometimes, by the way, it's worth taking short-term debt, but also having that long-term view.
Well, this is a big challenge. I mean, we talked about the path from initial AI product to Replit Agent. This is the challenge when things move so quickly. What short-term work do you do that maybe is at risk of being obsolete but is worth it?
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Where on the internet can folks find each of you?
So I'm mostly on Twitter at A Masad, AMASAD. Replit, same thing.
By the way, repl.it I thought was foreshadowing Michele coming from Italy.
Right, totally.
It was done on purpose many years ago, yes.
Yeah, we manifested him.
I thought so. Like, you had the top level domain there, foreshadowing the future AI. It was all in the works.
buying a domain in Italy is the worst. You need to have like an EU registrant, and you can only buy
One
it
day
for a
Replit
year. And
Agent can also buy the
but
domain,
it
right?
was worth it. It was so
Can we
worth
cut this from the podcast? No, just kidding. We should keep it. Yeah, I agree. That's why I live here, not in Italy. So yeah.
Well, I was saying the agent one day can just buy the domain for you too. You don't have to worry about anything. Take care of it all. And where can they find you, Michele?
I'm PIRRH everywhere on the internet. That's been my historical nickname.
Amazing. Well, thank you both so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Super interesting. Excited to see where Replit Agent and Replit will continue to innovate.
And I will say this one more thing: if you build something with Agent, tweet at us, and we'll share it with the world.
Love that.
And we'll fix the bugs.
We'll fix the bugs too.